is Pandora's Box, directed by G.W. Pabst.
George Wilhelm Pabst. The first thing we've covered from him, I believe.
Yeah, I think so. This movie is kind of one of the big hitters of the silent era.
Mm-hmm.
It's a pretty famous movie, especially for what's her name? The main
Louise
actor.
Brooks.
Louise Brooks's performance as Lulu, the main character in this movie.
It's kind of the big Louise Brooks movie.
Yeah.
Like, it's her kind of big lead role in she is the lead role in a couple things, but this is kind of like her biggest, most famous movie.
Mm-hmm. And this is a very famous movie and very well respected, and I think it sucks. I don't like this movie.
I am like confused by how I feel about this. Like, I think there's a lot of good stuff in this movie and like a lot of things that I like respect or like about it, but it's very weird. What it's trying to say is weird. How it handles its character arcs and like how the characters are represented is weird. There's like things in it where I'm like, this is almost very good, but there's something that's holding it back, and I haven't really been able to fully synthesize what it is about this movie that sort of like is off-putting.
I mean, we've talked about how once plot and style got going enough in movies that they're kind of developed this sort of intangible thing that it's just like, this works and this doesn't work, right? And it's the kind of thing that you can't define, but like once stuff became like storytelling became complex enough, you started seeing these kind of like ineffable ways that movies work or don't work. And I think this one just doesn't work in that way. I feel like I don't buy any of the characters. I don't buy any of their decisions, or like I don't get emotionally invested in them. I don't think that the plotting is very well told at all. And I think that this movie is just like sadistic for no reason. It's a slog to watch.
It kind of is, yeah.
It is just cruelty with no reason. It feels like a D.W. Griffith movie in terms of like how much it like fetishizes like
misery,
dark stuff happening, and misery, but like without even Griffith's kind of like picadillos that make his films kind of unique, be it racism or just like his various obsessions and stuff. Like, this movie just feels like a D.W. Griffith movie with no soul.
Yeah, damn. I do think Louise Brooks is good in this movie.
She is very good in this movie.
I don't necessarily know if her character is written well, but I think her performance is very good. And I think you can tell, her like charisma comes across very well in this movie. And I think Louise Brooks, I get the sense, had a pretty good understanding of how film performance works or doesn't work. Like, I think this is a better film performance that I'm used to seeing from silent film.
Yeah, she's great. She's great.
Yeah. Louise Brooks is, for those who don't know, is kind of like the iconic like 1920s like bob haircut woman. Like, she wasn't the first one to have that haircut, but it's kind of like she's kind of the reason why it's like so iconically associated with the 1920s. She was American, but was like a big part of like the 1920s showbiz party scene, and left Hollywood for Germany in 1928 because she was like, I'm sick of this.
She wasn't getting good parts, and she didn't feel like she was being respected in Hollywood. Yeah.
And said later that as soon as she went to Germany, she felt like she had so much more respect than in Hollywood. Although I think she went back to Hollywood pretty soon after, in like 29 or 30. So
yeah, in going to Germany, she broke her contract with Paramount, I believe, and because she did that, they kind of like blacklisted her almost from working that much anymore. So it became even more difficult for her in Hollywood after she came back.
Yeah. How to summarize this movie?
This movie is about a lady who's so hot that it causes
The
the
world
peop,
to break.
yeah, people want her so bad that just chaos breaks out everywhere she is.
Yeah, but I feel like this movie doesn't. Yeah, it's like parts in during parts of the movie it feels like it's kind of like blaming her for that, and other parts it feels like she is kind of being victimized by the people around her who are all sort of like trying to use her for their own ends.
Yeah, if this movie has anything to say, even if it muddles it by the end, it's the way that like men can like see women as like sexual objects and pass them around like footballs and treat them as like trophies and just not as real people, and how being an attractive woman can put you in a bunch of like dangerous and awful situations with men.
Mm-hmm.
But then yeah, there are points where the movie just kind of goes like, but it's your fault too, you know.
A little bit, yeah. I feel like, yeah, I think the things in this movie that work the best are its kind of depictions of like selfishness and how like I feel like every character in this movie is selfish in some form, and it
Hmm.
usually has some sort of karmic effect on them, except for one character who's maybe the worst person in the whole movie, which is Lulu's father, who is just a huge piece of shit and doesn't really ever get a comeuppance for it.
He's very supportive, but he is a complete scumbag.
He's a complete scumbag that is really only using his daughter in order to like further his own like addiction for like booze and drugs and
Pudding.
life. Pudding, yeah. Um yeah, this movie feels very critical of showbiz in that sense of like showbiz will eat you up and spit you out kind of. Um yeah, it's like I feel like this movie has things to say, but it doesn't really do a great job of saying them almost.
Yeah.
And like at times feels like it's actively like undercutting itself.
Yeah.
Um
It's basically like it's broken up into something like 8 acts, and every act is basically you're in a scenario with Lulu, and then something terrible happens that causes them to have to go somewhere else, and then
right.
that's the next act, and
And
repeat
it
the
gets
process.
worse each time.
Yes, yeah, they get more destitute and horrified every time.
Yeah. It starts out where Lulu is like the mistress of a newspaper publisher who feels kind of maybe like a thinly veiled analog for William Randolph Hearst.
Oh, I didn't think of that. Yeah,
Um,
and Louise Brooks was
Marion Davies, kind of.
niece, I believe. Yeah, she was involved with William Randolph Hearst, and actually like had a uh, another kind of real life horrific thing is that she had a fling with I no she had a fling with Marion Davies's niece, and when Hearst found out she was a lesbian, the niece, he had her committed to a mental institution where she jumped off the roof. Uh,
Right.
so yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, this, I'm sure that that played into Louise Brooks's performance in this movie. Like, she probably had a lot of real life things to like draw upon, kind of.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, she ends up being framed for the murder of the newspaper publisher because the newspaper publisher tries to get her to shoot herself, and there's a he gets shot instead.
He says, "Kill yourself so that you don't drive me to murder as well."
Yeah, normal thing to say to a person. There's a bit early on where she says, "The only way you're gonna get rid of me is you'll have to kill me," and I'm like, never say that to someone that you're sleeping with for their money. But yeah, there's like a lot of this showbiz stuff early on where like she is kind of trying to like use this connection to the newspaper guy to like further her career, but she's also like involved with other people at the same time. The newspaper publisher guy is trying to marry this other woman, but then that gets ruined. So he's like, fine, I'll marry you instead. he gets shot in the sort of like scuffle that they have, and Lulu is put on trial for murder. But then her dad, Shigolsh, and the other guy that is around her dad that he just kind of pals around with, pull the fire alarm, and they escape to places unknown. I kind of assume Morocco, to a sort of casino boat place.
Yeah, on the way, they're like on a train, and a guy spots her from the newspaper, and he threatens to turn her in. And it's just like
Yeah.
all of this, like once she is on the lam, there are all of these people that are holding this threat over her head of, I will turn you in for money.
Yeah.
And so you have to do what I tell you to do, up to and including, like, I'm going to sell you to a brothel.
Yeah. Basically, it gets worse and worse and worse until they're living, like, destitute in London. And so they all have no money. Shigolsh is, like, spending all their money on booze instead of food. And so Lulu is turning to prostitution to get money for food. But unfortunately, the first person that she picks up off the street is a serial killer. Maybe the Avenger from the movie The Lodger.
Yeah, I mean,
who murders her.
And on Wikipedia, it straight up says that he's Jack the Ripper.
Which doesn't make sense, because Jack the Ripper wasn't murdering people in the 20s. It was way too late for that.
Right. I mean, I guess I was like, if it's Jack the Ripper, does that mean this, like, set 40 years earlier or something?
I think that's just Wikipedia being silly. It's a clearly Jack the Ripper inspired, London murderer of prostitutes in the foggy night. Which is also what The Lodger is inspired by. And yeah, it ends on such a dour, sad note where, like, she gets murdered. Yeah. And it, like, barely even spends any time to, like, reckon with that, or, like, what, it's like it happens off screen. And so yeah, it definitely left kind of a bad taste in my mouth.
Yeah. There's no point to this movie.
There's a definitely a degree of sort of, like, kind of victim blaming of, like, Lulu is this, like, free-spirited, like, sexually liberated woman who's, like, trying to live her best life. But she's kind of
pixie dream girl.
But she's doing it by, like, sort of getting involved with all these, like, really selfish, awful people. And so that ends up being kind of her downfall, I guess. It feels thematically a little confused, and maybe that's something to do with, like, kind of the different perspective that I have as a contemporary person versus late 1920s Germany, because that's something that I feel like is a through line through a lot of the movies that we watched for this year, is this, like, very weird view of, like, romantic and sexual relationships that feels simultaneously like it's trying to kind of celebrate a degree of like liberation, but it's also, like, so like judgmental.
I mean, you could compare it with, like, slasher movies in the 80s, where it's like it wants to have its cake and eat it too, with, like, all of these, like, liberated people, but then they must be punished by Jason,
Right. Which I guess I think applies to this movie the most. I feel like with some of the other ones, it's more just like, oh, this movie has dog shit politics and it's in its depiction of humans.
Yeah.